Doomsday Clock number 1, which is Geoff Johns writing, Gary Frank on art. This is the kind of the culmination, or the beginning of the culmination of everything that started with DC Rebirth number 1 way back at the end of May last year. We are diving into this. It is essentially a Watchmen sequel combined with an event that's going to affect the DC universe. And yeah, I will say I'm glad I reread it just before this.
Me too.
Just refresh everything. I remember the big beats, of course, but just I think there's a lot of little things that time is taken.
I think something that I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't read it recently is just the way this feels, the way it reads, feels very much like another issue of Watchmen.
It does, yeah. There's definitely, to a point, there's definitely some emulation going on here with Johns and how he's written this to match.
That's perfect for Johns, though, because it's kind of what he does, right? Is he takes older things and then writes them as he remembers them. So if he really poured over Watchmen, then it's great that he put it in line. Although
I think what that's saying, though, Matt, is that Watchmen's now old enough that it now fits into that same era of like when he was bringing back Green Lantern, he was bringing back Flash and all these things. Like,
I mean, it's Watchmen was kind of the end of the Silver Age, right? Like it pumped us into the new era.
End of Bronze Age, Matt.
Was it?
Yeah, because after Watchmen we're in post-crisis, so we're in the post-crisis era.
Oh, that's right. But it kind of played with that. The superheroes being more than people. But then Watchmen showed that no, they're all just really disgusting, flawed people, too. So that kind of not really fits in with what John says because Johns has those rose-colored glasses for all his heroes.
This is set in 1992 in the Watchmen universe, a few years after the events of the first book, and some of the stuff we already knew, of course, but certainly it's driven home in the book that Ozymandias is the most wanted man on Earth, and things are close to collapse. It's funny because we and Connor were talking, and he was saying how I hope there's some political stuff in there like the first book had, where it mentioned Russia and it mentioned Cold War, and within like, the first 3 pages there's reference to the president golfing, Korea and the wall, and I'm like, okay, right, out of the system. Done.
In 92, like we're talking, we're still like 25 years away, like from the real world, so I thought that was a fun little twist. Well, like that's how bad the Watchmen universe was that it got sped up.
It's funny because when we were talking about that in the monthly, I said I don't necessarily need it to be that current, but what I wanted to do is explore like a post 9/11 style world. And Pierre obviously pointed out that the event at the end of Watchmen kind of was their 9/11, and this very much plays like that in the same way that this is okay. Everything's accelerated because that happened earlier.
Yeah. Obviously, it's an alternate universe as well because Nixon was still president in Watchmen, and like so. Obviously, things are different anyway.
He had never gone through Watergate and all of that stuff. So. And I think he was doing extra terms on top of everything too. So it was just a whole take on government corruption. And here it starts with President Robert Redford, was he president at the end of Watchmen? Because again, you guys have read it.
No, it was still Nixon.
Okay. Yeah. So then he must have won an election after all those events.
Seemingly, yeah. Apparently, Manhattan being decimated with this giant fake alien was enough to besmirch Nixon's reputation.
I think typically that's one of those things that kind of forces a change of party.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff at the start about sort of just giving us like a taste of the world and what's going on. There's a lot of news reports. There's like a conflict. We're counting down like even closer to midnight in the first book. It seems like we're hours away of some global catastrophes about to happen. It mentions Russia's invaded Poland. Korea can reach Texas now. I assume with missiles. It was kind of vague the way it said it, but that's what it sounded like. You got all this stuff going on. It sounds like they're hunting Ozymandias. You see like these group of soldiers like storm his Antarctic base, and that's when you get your first glimpse. Actually, there's something wrong with him. You see the X-ray and the spot on the skull. It's like, okay, interesting.
Pretty damn massive too. Like,
it is.
I've seen enough movies where that's the crux of things, and they're never that size. That thing looks like the size of a small egg.
But we can go back and talk about the early pages.
Just on a technical level, I want to talk about that edit there. Typically the edit is something we talk about in filmmaking, but here it did it in the comic where it focuses in on the spot and then it transitions into being like that old TV kind of turn on. from the middle, circle out sort of thing.
Yeah, the CRT sort of the
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's a really nice transition.
It's really nice, but that transition to what I'd call the main kind of, because I feel like the first like what was it, 8 pages, whatever it is all of this like world building stuff, but then we get to the main kind of what the book really is plot wise when we get to the prison. Because that's when we transition into the prison, and we have this introduction for Rorschach, where the prisoner's like, "Oh, let me out, guard, let me out, give me the keys." And then Rorschach's there, and the guy's like, "Oh, do you still want out?" He's like, "No, it's fine, I'll stay in here.
Yep.
It's fine."
Yep.
It shows you just even his, they talk about him being like disappeared, like he hasn't been seen since the event. So the fact his mask and getup still inspires fear. I think that's pretty cool, all those years later.
I think it's worth remembering, as much as he's disappeared since the event, it's not actually that long in
I think it's about 3 years.
Yeah, it's like 3 or 4 years.
So wait, what year was Watchmen taking place in?
For some reason I want to say 89, but maybe it was slightly earlier.
Well, because it came out in 86, right?
It came out in 86, but it was set like a couple years later.
Okay.
But it's, I mean, either way, it's what the difference between like 2 and 5 years. It's not
for whatever reason, I thought it took place in the earlier 80s. But again, that just shows I haven't seen it.
Maybe it did. I just remember. You kind of just remember 80s, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's not been that long. So obviously his image, his mystique still inspires this reaction from people, and we get some Rorschach's journal. And I don't want to pat myself in the back too much, but ever since they revealed that there was a Rorschach in this book, I immediately said it's not him under the mask; it's someone else who's taken the mantle. And I like that Johns didn't like drag that out to like the middle of the book. He's like, no. First issue, we're going to get this out of the way. All within like 4 pages of seeing him, we get the confirmation that it's not him.
Yeah, I think it's better because it's a different mystery. It's still a mystery. It's not, why is Rorschach alive? It's just, who is this Rorschach?
Yeah. And it's a very simple kind of tell, because he goes in to see this character, the Marionette, who he's there to break out because he needs to recruit her for this mission. We'll talk a bit more of that as we go. But she's like, "Oh, Rorschach," and he's like, "Oh, it's not the same one," and like, prove it. And it's really simple. He just takes off his glove and he's got a black hand, and it's like, okay, it can't be Kovacs. It just can't be. It's someone else. But of course, he still keeps saying, "No, I am Rorschach. There's nothing more to tell."
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Even the dialogue, because it's very that stilted Rorschach broken up language. It sounds like him.
Oh, it does, yeah.
Which is why it's kind of misleading up to that point, because you're like, it could be him. There's a few things that are like, okay, that doesn't quite seem right. Like his memory, we know he had a great memory, but he's very similar sounding.
Yeah, the whole story about the waitress, and he wanted his pancakes, and hence the pancake mix that everyone was sending out, the DC was sending out to the reviewers early.
Yeah.
But how like his pancakes got ruined because her boyfriend beat her up, so he went and stuck a fork in his tongue. Like, it's a very Rorschach. It's kind of his thing.
Yeah.
I obviously we're going to praise Gary Frank's art a lot, I feel like, but just
it's
everything with him, the silhouette and the shadows of like just him and his hat, like as he's walking around.
He's so expressive despite having no face.
Yeah.
Like just the body language on him, the way that in certain panels he holds up his hands to his mouth, and exactly. Like, you don't even really need the dialogue to know what's going on. Like, that's perfect.
Yeah. Do we have any thoughts on this little mistake he makes here with the? Is it room 13? Oh no, it's 31. It's the reverse.
Yeah, this is what I was on about. His memory's not quite there. There's something just not right in his brain, which is why, with the original Rorschach, when his fractured speech pattern was more a symptom of his education and just where he was mentally. Whereas this feels like, no, he's kind of confused. He's a bit broken. This feels like it's just he's not quite right in the head.
Oh no, I'm getting you there, but I was actually meaning more in a sort of like a meaning sense, like the idea of like it being the opposite of what he thought it was. Like I feel like this is like thematically already like setting something up with things being the other way around kind of idea.
No, that makes sense. And of course, when we did we mentioned symmetry was a big theme in the original book. Yep. So this is that symmetry of it's the reverse.
Yeah, and then the next page, one of the things we talked about a lot in the first book as well was the idea that you'd have this 9-panel grid, and you'd have like almost this like diamond shape based just from the colours of the panels, because they had different colours. Now the next page, when Rorschach's getting into the room and it's sort of going alongside these different nuclear launches in submarines, right? Which, first of all, the idea that the start of his mission is literally starting with the launch of missiles. Like, that's just, it's like okay, Watchmen was ticking down to like the disaster happening, but this is starting even closer. This is like
he's getting in under the gun.
Yeah, but this book never does the same thing where it had this sort of diamond of colour because the panels were different colours. But that page has like 3 like columns of colour.
Yeah, it does the row in the middle that stands out.
Yep.
It's actually all 3. It's blue, red, green. If you go across the page.
Which aren't those the colours of the CRT?
Well, they are actually. That's good job, Matt.
I know some things.
RGB. Yeah, there you go. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, so he's there to get this marionette, and it's like, okay, you help me, I'll help you get your son back. We have to quote unquote find God.
So here's where I want to first interject. I thought here's John's playing with new characters based off of Joker and Harley, just because like we know from certain covers. You know,
not quite.
Not Joker and Harley, no.
Yeah. But then I did some research, and you remember in Batman, where he formed his Dirty Dozen in the I Am Suicide arc.
And 2 of those characters were Punch and Jewel.
Yeah, and so finding out Punch and Julie were Charleston characters. Or Charlton. I would say Charleston, like the city, but it's Charlton characters. But John's doing what Moore did, making them, where Rorschach's supposed to be the question in Night Owl's Blue Beetle. Here we have the mime and marionette, which I thought was really fun.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I never actually... I mean, I got it was them. I never actually clicked to me that this was the exact same thing Batman did in I Am Suicide. That's a nice touch.
Yeah, it wasn't for me either until I looked up the characters. And I'm looking at them right now, and it's a bunch of Julie, and I was like, holy crap, I Am Suicide, Tom King. Like, was that maybe
a little bit of a hint?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we know how in-depth, like, Tynion is kind of with what's going on in Williamson, so...
And actually, remember that issue of Batman started with the Tease a Saturn Girl as well, which obviously Johns is, building up to in some way.
I wouldn't be surprised if Johns asked him to use those 2, because, they could have used other characters for that story.
Yeah.
But maybe it was like,
we even
just
said
use
that at
them
the time.
so that people are aware of them again. They're back in the awareness so that when this comes out, people will know who they are.
Yeah. I think it's a nice contrast as well if you're going to compare Rorschach and Batman. Like, Rorschach comes in during a prison riot and there's all chaos. Batman is let in by the authorities and is taken to whoever he wants to go and see. Like, there's just the difference between the 2 scenes and the way they play out. But she won't leave without Mime, or her husband, and we meet him, and he is a complete mime. And these other guys, these other prisoners, roughhouse him, and we think he's getting beat up. Like, these guys, like, maybe Rorschach and Marionette are going to come in and save him, or whatever. And she's like, "Hey, stop playing! I know you're in the middle of an act, but we have to go." So he,
a performance, she calls it.
Yeah.
And he just like snaps. We just see like the carnage, and we just end in one of the creepiest panels of the year of Mime smiling with the blood draped across of his mouth. Those eyes, I will see that in my nightmares.
And do you know why this is so effective as well? Like, okay, Mime is terrifying. We see that here. But it's Marionette that he was there for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, what she can do, what is it that makes her worse?
Yeah.
Is it worse? I mean, is it a scarier thing, or is it just more of a skill?
Well, she was...
Right, but we see
she was
how
in solitary.
Yeah.
That's true,
He wasn't.
That's true, yeah, she was in solitary. It's a fair point. Also, just the panel before that creepy ass smile, which, by the way, that creepy smile looks like one of those creepy dolls.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get why Matt would think, Joker-esque at first with panels like that.
But the panel before, though, like, I think he's just snapped that guy's neck, or he's just bit off part of his head or something like that. But the way he's got his arms out, it's like the middle of a performance. The way he's sort of standing for the crowd.
Yeah. He's taking it in. And I like that. Again, it's doing what Moore did with these characters in Watchmen, where, they're based off of characters, but he really made them his own and gave them their own personalities. So I like this. And even when I thought it was a Joker and Harley type thing, I was into these 2 characters just from how Johns was playing with them.
Oh, they fit in this universe. There's no doubt about that. And then comes one of my biggest laughs of the issue, actually. So... then Marionette obviously translate, or maybe translating is not the word, but sort of communicating for Mime. He's like, oh, he won't leave without his weapons. And he's like, we can get him new weapons, it's fine. It's like, no, these are special weapons. It's like, okay, fine, we're not, and Rorschach, like, and throughout this whole sort of sequence of him, like, coming out of the prison, he's constantly saying, oh, we've only got 3 hours and 20 minutes, I don't even know how long now, it's about 3 hours, but we're running out of time here, the whole time. So they go to, like, the lock-up sort of lockers where they've got confiscated things, and Mime just starts, like, putting his hand into an empty locker and pulling out invisible weapons, because he's Mime. And I just love, it was when Rorschach at the bottom of the page just goes, tss, like, he's just annoyed. Yeah. He's like,
and what that has led to my favourite joke theory, which is that Rorschach is Damien. Damien always says that.
But anyway, so no, it's I mean, disturbing. In fact, actually, just to add on to my laugh here, at the bottom of that page, Rorschach's like, you have problems.
You have big problems.
Because how screwed up is Rorschach? And he's telling, he's like, no, this is not so even for me. Like, come on now, guys.
It kind of really sets just how desperate this is.
Yeah. So before we actually get to where they're going, there is actually a page that transitions to it, and I feel like it really emphasizes, it really focuses on this. This couple with a baby are leaving town. They're evacuating New York, and they drop this like a little file folder on the ground, and I feel like it's really emphasizing that these files. Maybe I'm just looking at it wrong.
No, I get you. It's it's the panel where it says it is leave non-essential possessions behind.
Yeah,
but it hovers on that like, okay, no, that is essential, but they've left it anyway.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, who are these people? What are these files? I don't know. I'm curious. I got really excited because it was when they're walking in the sewers, Rorschach and Marionette and Mime, in the next sort of few pages. Yeah. There was a moment, it's when he's looking at the 2 passages, and it's like the 2 sewer passages, that I realised where they were going, because it looks like an owl face, and I'm like, oh shit!
That looks like the owl eyes on the ship.
Yeah, that's where they're going. So I got really excited as when they eventually get to the big doors, and I'm like, oh man, it's this Night Owl's lair. Not to gloss over the "don't point your imaginary guns at me" moment, because that was fantastic.
What wasn't funny the first time?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. But it always struck me Rorschach was kind of a funny character just because of his darkness. Like, he had that whole monologue in the first Watchmen about Pagliacci. And, it's supposed to be this tragedy, and he thinks it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's often his bluntness as well that makes it funny, because he just has no filter.
And actually, I'd probably say this is, like, in terms of like pure like layouts and pacing, I actually think this walk through the sewers is my favourite part of the book. Just in terms of those factors, because I really feel the timing and the pacing as they're walking through the sewers. Like, there's that top of that page, that first page in the sewers, when it's the top 3 panels have become one for the wide shot, and then you're going through it. And I mentioned how that diamond shaped thing doesn't happen with colour. It actually kind of happens in another way in the next page
with the lighting.
With the lighting, and more specifically the camera angle, if you want to call it that, because the top, left, right, and bottom panels in the 9-panel grid are all top-down shots of the floor. Whereas the rest are not, so it actually creates that panel, that sort of diamond and cross shape.
You talk about this, the structure and layout. I really like, you said that first panel here is the wide one. That's the establishing shot, and then we move into the scene. It really flows like that. Yeah.
Also, I'd love that silhouette shot of Rorschach in the bottom right of that panel grid. Really beautiful stuff. Nice. Yeah, all of it. So they get to Night Owl's place, and there's all this. Like, we get the idea that there's been some rumors about what's happened to everyone in this universe since we last saw them. Marionette's like, oh, is it true what happened? Did you kill Spectre and Night Owl and all this stuff? And he's like, no, not true. I am Rorschach. All you need to know. He keeps sort of emphasizing that. But we find out who he's working with. He's working with Ozymandias, who. Sorry?
Who has another little baby cat thing.
Oh, he does, yeah. He's got a new one.
Yeah.
That excited me.
I was like, this guy's never looked more like Pete in his life.
Yeah. Why is he exciting Connor? Connor's the one who hates cats.
I hate cats, but I love the idea that even on the run, he's the most white man. He took the time to genetically engineer a new little pet. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Well, he still has access to hundreds of millions of dollars, because he offers to. Because when Marionette's like, hey, there's like $20 million on your head, why don't I just turn you in? And he's like, well, I can pay you 200.
Yeah.
So he's still got funds somehow.
Yeah, obviously. So,
he's got a thing going. But yeah, so obviously when they said find God earlier on, I immediately thought he meant Manhattan. But here this scene confirms it. It's like, no, we need to find Manhattan. He's the one person who can maybe solve this world, who can maybe fix everything that's about to go wrong.
And that's when all my DCU conspiracy stuff starts going in and going, okay, this is set in 92. I mean, when did the Rebirth stuff, you know what I mean? Like, because up to here, it's just a sequel to Watchmen. Like, it really doesn't touch on anything that we've been with Rebirth at all. And then we get here, and it's boom, he kicks it into gear.
Wait, so you're thinking 92, that's the death of Superman. Is that what you're...
I have a different
theory. What it's... What?
I think it's the same time. There's multiple reference in this. Rorschach talks about his watch being slow. Time's not right. I think this universe is literally slowed down. So it's 92 for them, but it's present day. At the same time.
I'm saying that the 92. I'm just saying there's a reason why it's taking place at that point. That's not just an arbitrary number.
I didn't necessarily read it as this is this. I mean, maybe it is slowed down. It's the same time as thing, but the way I took it was this was 92 because in terms of like the real world, because obviously they're saying 10 years is missing from the DC universe, but obviously we move slower in comics because we don't have like Superman and Batman have not been around for 80 years, right? Time's condensed. Like New 52 took place over a year apparently, even though it was like 5 years for us. So to me, I was thinking, it's 92 because it's just after 92 where the DC universe lost the 10 years kind of idea.
Right. That's what I'm thinking too. Is that once Manhattan, that's when at this point is really when Manhattan starts messing with things. And I think that's where we're heading. I always had this theory when it came to Rebirth that Manhattan's not working solely by himself because that's, he just wants to be left alone. Like that's the whole point of his exile to Mars.
That was the big thing when we were talking about the original book. At the end, it's like he's actually not vindictive at the end. He's actually at a place where he smiles because Laurie and Dan have found each other. He's happy about that. Yeah, he's like, I'm going to go to a less complicated place. He's not like evil at the end of that book. So
he's curious.
And he's not meddlesome either. Like everything he does in that first book. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong because it's still fresh to you guys, but the whole thing that starts his exile is he feels like they say that he gave one of his ex-girlfriends cancer, right?
Yeah,
because of his
cancer.
Yeah. And so he's just like, well, I don't want to have that type of impact. So what happens between then and Rebirth that he becomes this god that's interfering in everything?
Well,
and I don't think...
To be fair, the very ending of Watchmen is him saying, I'm going to go off to a new galaxy, a fresh galaxy, and maybe try and create some life. He is kind of meddlesome, but like I say, it's not vindictive. It's very curious. No. It's like just to see what he can do.
Right, but then we see the stuff that happens from Rebirth to the Button to the Oz Effect, and that screams of a vindictive, God. Let's just say God, for lack of a better term. The stuff that he does with Jor-El to manipulate Superman, and with Batman. With the Flashpoint. And everything, and then you have the whole Legion being, Saturn Girl being locked up for whatever reason. So, so I feel like Manhattan's involved, but I don't think he's, My theory right now is Ozymandias gets to him, and it's Ozymandias creates Rebirth or the New 52, whatever one we're gonna say, in order to make up for stuff, because that's all he wanted to do was create a perfect world, right? That was his whole idea for the squid monster. It was a unifier.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but here's the thing, though. Like that's not the effect that New 52 has. New 52's effect was that it made everyone weaker.
Right. And so, what if he started New 52, and then now this is Manhattan trying to fix things? I don't know. There's still so much at play here, but this is just where my brain's leading me.
I don't think he has the power to do that.
Yeah, I honestly feel like let's leave the speculations for grander things till we get to the end of the book, because we're working through here. I love the little sequential moment at the bottom. It's when Ozymandias is talking about how this Rorschach's even worse than the last one. He's like, the last one was violent and stuff, but this one,
I think it was really interesting. He talks about how the first one was interesting, cruel, but he held on to his principles, and it was predictable because of that. But this one, and then gets cut off. But it's the idea that this one's a bit of a wild card.
But the arm when he holds at Rorschach's arm and he looks down at it, he's like, I'm not upset, and he looks back up, not yet. Like, just that little sequential of all that happening and him taking his hand off and be like, okay.
Ozymandias actually looks a bit scared afterwards. He's like, okay, not yet. We'll we'll start over.
Yeah. So,
yeah, we're good. We're good. Well, even the cat feels something because the cat hisses and jumps down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just basically, world is doomed. Like, my dream is dead, but there's one person who can still save it, Dr. Manhattan. That's why you're here. We have to find him. And he even points out, I only need you. I didn't need the husband, but I guess it was inevitable you wouldn't let him not come. So we're going to have to just deal with that. But obviously, we get reminded he's left for a galaxy. We get that little flashback panel. And he's like, we have to find John wherever he's retreated to. And then it cuts to Metropolis.
Oh,
Yeah.
Gary Frank Superman. That's my favorite thing in the world.
Well, forget that though. Just the fact that it cuts to Metropolis on that line,
Right.
that is giddy. Like, I was giddy when I went to this page.
Yeah. The implication is clear.
You turn the page and you're like, holy shit. And you get into the apartment, you know, Superman and Lois are lying in bed, and it goes into his head, into this dream he's having, and it's of this, like, him on prom night, and he's upset because Lana's with Pete, and his parents give him a pep talk, and he goes in, and they're like, oh, you'll be fine, Martha, don't worry. Like, this is, and I like this line, this is God's plan. Given that we've been talking about God throughout the issue, and we've been comparing it to Manhattan, and we've been talking about how things have been altered and stuff, they have the car crash which killed them, which is continuity from the New 52.
Right.
And
that's original Superman continuity as well. You know, because that's where Morrison pulled it from. So.
Oh sure,
you know.
but like,
it's not the more familiar version.
Yeah,
that
it's not
not
like,
at all.
because the way I'm reading this, because obviously he wakes up, he's in a cold sweat. Lois is like, oh, you know, Clark, what's wrong? I don't remember the last time you've had a nightmare. And we ended the book with, I don't think I've ever had one. I think what this is to me is that he's having this memory of his parents dying because that was something that was changed. This is something that was not meant to be.
I agree. When it says, oh, this is God's plan, and we've been talking about Manhattan as God. Like, that's the word they use repeatedly, and it's like, okay, Manhattan did this.
Yeah, he changed. This was something that, specifically something that we were unhappy about. When New 52 started, we didn't like that his parents weren't alive. I mean, obviously his dad had been dead for a little bit, but he was alive for a lot longer in his life, and his mum was still around. We were pissed that they took the Kents away. This was an infuriating thing for us.
What I find very interesting is, you know, we talk about it how, you know, we're saying, oh, this is a memory. But only the first half of this can be a memory. He's not there for the actual incident, but he has this so vivid.
And I think that maybe that's like, it is something trying to communicate to him. It's someone trying to like show him, here's what happened next, and this isn't right. Something changed, something that was affected. So
yeah, and just to go back a few pages, Ozymandias, you know, we know he has cancer now, and I think that's one beautifully ironic, seeing as he's the one who gave all those people cancer before to you know, to give that message to Manhattan.
It's that symmetry.
Yeah, and what I'm wondering though is, you know, we're talking about this is almost like someone sending Superman a message. I wonder, can he beam messages into the head, but it kind of gives him cancer. He tests it on himself, and that's what gave him cancer, maybe. But he thinks, you know, Superman will be all right.
He can take it, yeah, because he's Superman.
Yeah.
Right. And I wanted to point out on that first page where we go to Metropolis, right in the center is what Superman was reading, or what Clark was reading before bed, because his glasses are sitting on top of it. And it's B.F. Skinner's Walden 2, which is B.F. Skinner was a behavioral psychologist, but he wrote this narrative story, and the whole theme of it is how people are shaped by their environment, that it's not, you know, it's kind of nature versus nurture in that. And, you know, it's one of these things where it's like, well, I could make up a whole thing, but why put it in the center page? You know, why is Superman reading that? Because that's ultimately the character of Superman, right? That he, you know, he's a product of his environment, being raised by the Kents, and, you know. Yeah,
and it's this idea, okay, if the environment was changed, like, you know, with the Kents,
different.
What has changed about him?
Yeah,
he's.
I mean, at least from our perspective, he's weaker because he didn't have their nourishment for, you know, their for longer.
Yeah, exactly.
I also want to point out there's a really thematic thing going on here. The whole window, the beam of light coming through the window, it's almost like a view hole. Like this is the peephole that someone's watching him through, and then that's even maintained with that panel where it's looking through his glasses and it's looking through the lens, and it's like, again, he's being watched by someone. Yeah. Like it's very there. It's the light coming through the window, the way it's kind of like just that one porthole, and then the glass, because it looks like a TV, like again an old CRT TV, the way it's looking through that glass lens.
Yeah,
it does.
I think that's very intentional. So I mean, obviously the art throughout.
That's phenomenal, isn't it?
It's great stuff. I love Frank in general, but Frank drawing Superman.
Honestly, I love him too. He's always done some great work, but this is honestly some of his best. The way that it's because often he nails all the big moments, but I think in the past I've never been quite as impressed by his sequential art in the same way that I was here with all the small moments, the way they kind of just lap together.
Yeah, him and Johns work together really well.
I think he brought his A game. I think he knew this was probably the biggest thing he's ever going to work on, and he's went, no, I'm not like phoning this in, and hopefully they got a bit of a head start, and that means
I think they must have done, because we know how long he's been working on this. You know, we talk about when he stopped doing the covers.
Yep.
Yeah,
and, that was months ago now.
So I hope that this maintains schedule, because they've had some time to get ahead, and I don't believe the rest of the issues are as long as this one. This one was a meaty length issue.
Yeah,
it's a shame. I could do with them all like this.
Yeah, so could I. I'd happily take them all being this. I assume the last one will be long as well, but.
Yeah,
but yeah, I could happily take them all like this. Joe, it's funny. I think for the first few pages, I was kind of thinking, "Oh man, this is just as dense as Watchmen." Partly luckily, once it got to the actual like Rorschach in the prison, it actually kind of let itself breathe a bit more, and it wasn't as packed.
I think it was there was still as many panels on the page. There just wasn't as much dialogue.
Yeah, and I think that's good. I think it says, no, here's a Watchmen sequel, but we're not just going to, as much as we're adhering to the style of Watchmen, as much as we're adhering to the layouts and that kind of thing, we're not necessarily going to be so beholden to it that we're going to not be a modern comic at the same time.
I think that's the word you're hearing there, modern. I think part of the big controversy is like, oh, Watchmen, would like that should never be touched. And I agree into a point, you know, when they were doing like before Watchmen, yeah, they shouldn't have existed. I don't need to see the past, but this is different. This is taking the ideas and moving forward, and that applies to the technical aspects of it as well. Like it's, you know, the style is maintained, but like, you know, in terms of, you know, the paneling structure. But okay, we've maybe trusting a little bit more to the art than we would have done then. The colors are a bit they're more evolved because technically they're better, but even though they evoke the same style. And it's like I say, it's modernized it in the same way that we've kind of pulled forward in the world.
Yeah, but that said, though, I think something that's, I mean, I guess it's happened to an extent because we keep redoing Origins to a point, but I feel like where the true outrage would be is if someone said, no, we're just going to redo Watchmen because we want it with prettier art. That would be where you outrage.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, never do that.
I assume it's safe to say that we're all feeling very positive about Doomsday Clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was it. Honestly, it feels because it's paying off and everything we've building to for the last year and a half. And as much as obviously a lot of it is a Watchmen sequel, and it's only those last few pages where we get, but it's so exciting when you turn that page and it's like, oh, we're in Metropolis. This is how we're.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even if you take away that stuff and you just go, okay, we're going to do a Watchmen sequel with this team, and you know the first 90% of this book is just Watchmen sequel. If you gave me that for 12 issues, I'd be still just as excited.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be maybe more even now going forward. I feel like the first issue you start in Watchmen World and you build that up, and then you just tease us with the DC stuff at the end. Like I feel like that makes sense to do in the first issue. I can see it going back and forth. I mean, I can see, you know how the original Watchmen, they had like an entire issue with like on Mars with Laurie in Manhattan. I can see similarly, like issue 4 of this could be all DC, issue 5 could be all Watchmen. I could see them doing that if they wanted to. So, you know, wherever it's going, I am A-okay with it. Do it.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Me too. So, I guess we should speculate about Rorschach.
We should. Yeah. I mean, I feel like
to a point.
Honestly, I think my hope right now is that it's a new character we've not met, and it'll just be a case of he was affected by the events of something in the original book, and that's who it is. Because some of the guesses that people are throwing out there feel kind of forced to me, and they're not really adding up.
I agree, and I think because there's only really 2 black characters in the original comic.
Yep.
There's the kid at the newsstand,
who's definitely dead. And then there's the psychiatrist who talks to Rorschach, who was already, I mean, it's only been like say 5 years at most, but
I also went back and checked. He's also dead.
He's also dead. Yeah,
dead.
You're right.
So
here's the thing, though. When I was skimming through it after I read this, I went back and skimmed through Watchmen, see if there was anything else that I missed. I did notice the psychiatrist had a mug on his desk that says "Dad," and I'm wondering if you're talking about these files that are left here. What if they're the files that he took home on Rorschach, and his son kind of read them, and it kind of affected him.
What was the psychiatrist's name? You remember?
Oh God,
no.
Okay, because in the back matter we get some nice, Watchmen-esque stuff in the back here.
Yeah.
And there's a clipping about I think it's a Roger Jackson. The strange case.
The Jackson
Long was the psychiatrist.
Yeah, there's an article about the murder. The guy who had the journal from the New Frontiersman was murdered, and they caught this guy for it, Jackson, who they think he's actually innocent, and they've cleared the charges, but there's the mystery there. So I mean, I guess right now he's probably my prime suspect for Rorschach.
See, that's too easy though.
Oh, it is, I agree it's too easy, but there's no other real options.
No, there's not.
And I like
unless it's like Pete says, it's a completely new character, and that's fine too.
Which this would be, to be fair. This person in this article is new.
See, what's interesting is this file clearly belongs to Rorschach at the end, right? Because it's got the menu from where he has breakfast, Joe's.
Yeah.
Oh, true.
So this is Rorschach's file. So why would he have an article on himself like that? That doesn't. I mean, that seems a bit too self-glorifying for this guy.
Maybe, yeah, I can see it. I do kind of like the idea that page with the family leaving New York is related, because that kind of ties into the whole idea of the first book, where we actually see Rorschach with the sign walking around tons of times at the start. The first several issues of the book. Yeah. We see him all the time, and it's not until later where you go, oh, that was Rorschach the entire time. Yeah,
I'm just looking at what else is in this file. There's a bit about some of the combination player, but what really sticks out is at the end it says Dad's. In it's big bold letters that kind of stands out, and obviously just talking about that. Then
it depends what age the son was, because
exactly we never saw him.
That mug implies to me he's young, which he still wouldn't be old enough yet to be this. But
see, I don't know about that. I think those mugs are really common gifts that people get even when they're older. Just like, hey, I have one of these.
Matt's sleuthing away. I can see him scouring pages looking for clues.
Yep, this is the worst thing for me. Because we all know how my brain's wired.
No, I agree, because there's so much. I've read this twice, and there's so much in it where I'm like, I need to read it again still. Every time I'm catching little things.
Those first few pages are so dense with tidbits of the world and where everything is right now. It's kind of insane just how packed it is.
Yeah, it is. It is crazy. I mean, just the fact that they're protesting at Veidt's company headquarters, I didn't even catch that the first time. It's only the same time where I saw the V on the wall.
I mean, also it says the vice president shot the attorney general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's happening. Chaos. It's just chaos. That's happening.